Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And I will just say that you need to watch this video in full, because at the end of it I'm presenting something that is no longer in the public domain. It does not exist in the public domain. We are going to break it. We're going to break this news, and it's a letter, and it's an astonishing letter when you see the context. Now, I had a few days ago a new contact, a new source. We're calling this source Merlin to protect the source. Merlin came forward. We've verified that what Merlin has got is genuine, true, and accurate. Merlin's told me a few stories. They're in equal parts astonishing and horrifying. I'm not releasing anything yet. I'm sworn to secrecy because things are happening at a quick pace. However, for one of the stories, once something happens quite quickly, hopefully quite quickly, I can release the story in full, and I'm even going to be allowed access to one of the people involved to get an interview, and this will be exclusive. Merlin is my new best friend, put it this way. On the other story, it's one that if the truth came out, it would really hit the fan. Again, soon, and in parts, piecemeal. But as I say, sworn to secrecy on these. However, this video, we are going to look at an old newspaper article in order to give context. What's important here is what's being said and the date. We're also going to look at the COVID treatment advice from the government, from NICE, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, wherein it says certain things. Now, this is no longer available. I had to go and use the Wayback Machine in order to find it. I've downloaded it. Again, this is an astonishing piece. And then, of course, we're going to end up with this letter. Like I say, this is not in the public domain. And when the letter was originally sent, it had a please destroy notice either with it or very shortly afterwards, please destroy the letter, because they realised that the contents of this letter could be rather awkward, shall we say. But we have a copy of that letter that should have been destroyed. And that is what's not in the public domain. That's what we're breaking, and that is what I'm going to be showing you. But we need the first two parts to give the context. And without further ado, we're going to straight in to this independent article from about 2.5 years ago. Here we go. So here's the article. Coronavirus, leading ex-nurse says pandemic would be useful in solving bed blocking by killing off patients. Useful. This is a nurse saying this. Now, this is dated Friday the 6th of March 2020. Scotland's lockdown came out on the 26th of March. So this is about 3 weeks prior to lockdown. And this is dated very early March. However, this is reporting on what this nurse, who actually is a professor, it's not just any old nurse, it's a professor, is saying about the effects of this pandemic and how it would help. But she didn't say this on Friday the 6th of March. This was said sometime before. Not just a few days before, but significantly before. But obviously people were paying attention and were listening. But we'll go through this piece quickly now. It's not going to be the usual hot takes thing. There'll be some comments, but nothing major. I just want to read through it so that you've got it and you understand what's being said. So, a coronavirus pandemic could be quite useful in clearing bed blocking in hospitals by killing off patients, a leading former nurse has claimed, while admitting her remarks would be seen as horrific. So, you've got a problem with bed blocking, but hey, here comes the coronavirus pandemic, and we can clear all these beds. That'd be great, and we can get more people through. Professor June Andrews said COVID-19 could help hospitals with delayed discharges. Again, remember the word delayed discharges. They have a problem with delayed discharges. Tend to be elderly people, because these people would be taken out of the system. The former director of the Scottish Government's Centre for Change and Innovation acknowledged the controversial tone of her comments, but said they represented the kind of strategic view needed to deal with the circumstances. Professor Andrews later said she'd intended her remarks to be ironic. Yeah, sure, I've said these terrible things and realised that people were very, very set against what I said. It was a joke. It wasn't a joke. When you come and have to say later that it was ironic, you know it bloody well wasn't. She meant every word, and people were listening. Certain people, who we'll come to. Speaking at a Scottish Parliament Audit Committee, she says, as a nurse, my job is to be kind, but I also have to rip off sticking plasters, so sometimes it seems unkind what you have to say. Now, I don't think that what she's saying is inaccurate. I think she could have phrased it better, perhaps, but I don't think she said anything inaccurate there. But, that's what it is. She said, if you're on the board of a care home company, a pandemic is one of the things you think about as a potential damage to your business because of the number of older people it's going to take out of the system. This is another key line. She's acknowledging that a pandemic such as COVID would decimate care homes, which would cause a drop in earnings for the care home operators because all these old people are dying. A lot of these old people in these care homes are subsidised by the government. And so if they were all dropping dead in the care homes, it would not only the pandemic would not only clear the hospital beds, it also would reduce the costs to the government in geriatric care. That has also been noted. You must pay attention to these things. So curiously, ripping off the sticking plaster in that hospital, I'm thinking about that as 92 delayed charges. A pandemic would be quite useful because then your hospital would work because these people would be taken out of the system. Now that sounds like a horrific thing to say, but it is the case that somehow or other we have put people in the wrong places by not having the kind of strategic views we should have. Professor Andrews, who is advisor to the Dementia Services Development Trust, said she had been targeted by people online for her comments. She said, the one thing I had learned from this is I should never use irony. And you never have you? You meant every word. It wasn't ironic, it was factual. She said, I was asking the question about what politicians were expecting to happen. Do they expect the old people to disappear? Up until that point, no. But wheels are turning in the heads of these politicians. In total, 106. Now, this goes to show you the state of affairs. This was 3 years ago. This is before the big pandemic bull BS that happened. But in total, 163 people in the UK had tested positive for COVID-19 as of Friday, up from 115 cases reported at the same time on Thursday. Very, very low numbers of cases across the whole of the UK. This is the beginning of March. This is really, really important. This is the beginning of March, and there's only 115 cases or whatever, 163 cases across the whole of the UK. The UK has reported its first death linked to COVID-19 on Thursday, the day before this article. A woman believed to be in her 70s died after being diagnosed with the virus at the Royal Berkshire Hospital in Reading. Matt Hancock, confirmed a second death on Friday after an older man with an underlying health condition died. It's understood the man who believed it died in hospital at Milton Keynes tested positive for the disease in initial screening. So what we've got here is this professor saying a pandemic way prior to March, saying a pandemic would be useful in clearing the beds, but it was also, if it got into the old people's homes, it would decimate them and indirectly would save the government a lot of money. And this is at a period when there was only 163 people diagnosed with COVID across the whole of the UK. And this is the 6th of March. These dates are important. Pay attention. So that's that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go and have a look now at the it's a PDF we have of the COVID response form from NICE, and in specifically one section where it is very, very important because the information they gave on this is probably the reason why they took it offline and it was so hard to get a hold of a copy. But here goes. Right, so this is the form. It's from NICE, as you see up here. The National Institute for Health and Care Excellence. It's the COVID-19 rapid guideline managing symptoms, including at end of life in the community. And it's a very important line, or a very important clause in that sentence, is the including at the end of life in the community. We're going to go down now to one particular section. Now, before we go any further here, just see the published date, 3rd of April 2020. Now, of course, this thing just doesn't get thrown together very quickly. This has taken quite some time to come together, probably in the region of a few months because things like this, they don't happen overnight. They need to be assessed, collated, agreed upon, reassessed before they even go out to be published. So this would have taken some time to do, but it was published on the 3rd of April, so more or less a month after that article. But it would have been around and in the, it known and in the ether for quite some time before that. So that's, again, the time frame here is very important. But we need to go down to a particular point, which is 6.5. Where are we? 6.5. There we go. Now, just to come up to show you what section is. Section 6 is managing breathlessness. Now, obviously, breathlessness is something that a lot of COVID patients will have suffered from. And it's giving something like, it's just giving some general advice here, but it's when the managing of breathlessness, and there's techniques here, which are saying, sort of sit the patient up, put them in a chair, relax them. These are all physical changes to the body that you can do in order to alleviate any sort of physical breathing difficulties. But sometimes you need therapeutic treatment, i.e. Medicinal, treatment. And so that's what 6.5 is talking about. Now, here we go with 6.5. It's saying here, consider an opioid and a benzodiazepine combination for patients who, with COVID-19, are at the end of life, have moderate to severe breathlessness, and are distressed. Now, it is this bit here, who are at the end of life. That's the important thing, because this comes from a treatment. Now, opioids and benzodiazepines are a legitimate treatment for people who are at their end of life. But this isn't for COVID treatment. This has been shoehorned in because this particular treatment is referring to people who are terminal. So, stage 4 end of life cancer. Sort of severe trauma, severe liver death, things like that. People basically who are not expected to generally live very much longer. And what this is a way of, let's just say, easing the breathing, the respiration downwards to ease the patient towards death. It is an unwritten word, but it is literally euthanizing the patient in a humane way. But it's only for people who are absolutely at end of life, and it's their sort of, let's just put them down and away like that. Now, what they mean, of course, by opioids and benzodiazepine. Well, it's going to be the opioid is going to be morphine. Predominantly, it's morphine. And the benzodiazepine they're talking about would be midazolam. Now, in combination, these two depress respiration. They bring respiration down. But it's only to be used at the end of life. Now, of course, we were talking here, this is the end of life as in, a terminal disease like cancer. Not an infectious disease for which most people will make a recovery. This is quite the wrong treatment for this. Who decides what the end of life is? Because within these notes for this particular treatment, there's no clarification that this particular treatment came from an end of life care for an unrelated non-COVID, non-infectious disease. This was for a terminal illness. So there's no definition, there's no explanation that this should only be used for terminal patients who would otherwise be terminal, regardless of whether they've had COVID or not. It also doesn't define what end of life is. So you can have someone making this decision, doctor, consultant, senior nurse even, could make this decision based on the chart. So it could just be accidentally, we've given you this because we think that's what the appropriate treatment is, and someone could die. Or it could be deliberate, but not bad deliberate. It could be a doctor looking at the records, looking at the charts and thinking, this patient, and looking how ill the patient is because of the COVID. This patient is obviously near end of life and would administer this treatment. And this treatment would effectively euthanize the patient. And if it's one of the first two, then, quite simple, it's an accident, or it's a busy doctor, because we know how busy they are. It's a busy doctor making a professional assessment and giving a professional opinion based on the information he has in a highly pressured situation. Again, unfortunate, but not evil, not deliberately bad. Maybe a bad result, but it wasn't done. No malice, put it that way. Malice was not there. It was done purely on a professional medical basis. Both end up, unfortunately, with a euthanized patient, a dead patient, unfortunately. However, there was no malice aforethought. However, it could be that there are some people making this decision who were making this decision deliberately, thinking, well, this will help because we have such a bed blockage. You have to ask then why they would think like that. Now, of course, before we go any further, it must be said that this is genuine treatment for end-of-life care patients. It's when they get to terminal agitation. It's part of the terminal end-of-life care. And it sort of eases them down. It brings them down, it calms them down, it depresses the breathing, and they fall asleep. And then what happens is you get the stuttered breathing, so they may seem to be breathing very quickly, but they're not taking in much breath because there may be fluid in the lungs. And so it's deemed to be low respiration because no matter how hard they're breathing, they're not actually respiring. The alveoli covered in fluid, and they slowly, they're basically slowly drowning almost. But you give them this, it calms the breathing down. And then what happens is they're not getting enough oxygen through the lungs, therefore the organs start necrotizing with lack of oxygen, and basically death follows. And that's what happens with this combination drug. Basically more the morphine and the diazepam, or the benzodiazepam, and so that basically euthanizes the patient. Now we've sorted out that we have a motive. We have the motive because we've seen that article in the paper that gives you the motive. We need to clear the beds and we need to clear all those people out of the care homes. And here, of course, with this, we have the means. So we have a means and we have a motive. And as any good policeman tells you, all you need left to secure conviction is the opportunity. And that's what we're going to have a look at next. And we're going to have a look at a letter. And so I'll round off here and come up and we'll show you the letter. Now, taking great care with the placing of this letter, we need to go through it. I just don't want you to see the top and bottom. I'll show you the whole letter in full, but it's important that we get through the actual meaning of the letter. So we've got this. We are writing to thank you. Dear Chief Officers, the Health and Social Care Partnerships, reduction in delayed discharges. Now, we saw in the article at the front end how that nurse, that professor, was saying how useful it would be to get rid of delayed charges. It was causing a massive problem across the whole of the NHS. And yet nobody seems to find a way, because these are all old people who don't have anywhere to go, and the care homes are full and you can't shove them in there. And so they need to find some magic way of clearing these old people. Now, this letter is dated, if I pull that down, you just about see it there. You see, this letter is dated the 10th of April, just a few days after that NICE report was released, and about just over a month after that article appeared in the paper, which in itself was probably a month after that professor said those things. So we have this issue of we need to clear a lot of people out of beds. Now, the target was given was 900. We'll see that in the letter. And a target of 900 beds were cleared. Now, that's almost impossible to do. You can't clear these 900 people. There's nowhere to put them. They don't have the release. We've never been able to manage it before. However, they have this treatment that they call that seems to be a marvellous, miraculous thing. And so the government, via somebody, have said, wouldn't it be great if we could somehow miraculously clear the beds to free up the hospitals? And also, of course, it would help if there weren't so many people in old people's homes, in care homes, possibly because of the cost. Also, of course, as an aside, it may be that the older people were more likely to be unionists. So it might be politically expedient if they all sort of went away too. So we have this letter. Dear Chief Officers, Health and Social Care Partnerships, reduction in delayed discharges. We are writing to thank you for your and your team's commitment and hard work across the health and social care partnerships in response to the challenges of COVID-19, so clearly demonstrated, and here we go, in the tremendous progress you have made over the last month in reducing delayed discharges. Now, I must say at this point, sorry about the right hand side of this letter being slightly cropped. It was a photograph and that's what was presented, but it is only that very, very last line, and so you can infer what the actual words are, from context. Now, that there in the last month, so basically March, throughout the whole of March, so that's since that article appeared in the paper, and that professor saying that thing, even prior to that, somebody was listening and someone was thinking, yes, it would be a great opportunity to remove the bed blockers and clear the old people's homes. That must have gone through somebody's mind, because somebody suggested, let's get these cleared beds, let's clear all these people out of these beds, let's have a goal of 900 and see if we can do it quickly, because it's important. The request from Malcolm Wright, Director General Health and Social Care, during March to reduce delayed discharges by 900 by the end of April must have seemed very challenging when first made. So they had until the end of April. This is only the 10th of April. We were very pleased to note that the goal was passed on the 8th of April. This letter was written on the 10th. So throughout, basically from March, the whole of March to the 8th of April, what we're talking there, 6 weeks, they've managed to clear 920 beds. It says when delays had reduced overall by 920 from the beginning of March, a 6 week period, you got rid of 920 beds, blocked beds. She says on this, I'm giving it away really, haven't I? A remarkable national reduction overall of 57%. So you're getting on for 2/3 of the cleared beds virtually overnight. Never happened before. They have a motive from what that professor was saying. They have the means, because that end of life care was deliberately inserted into that NICE document. Now, the official publication date of that NICE document was early April. But the important thing here is, of course, that would have been doing the rounds way, way before it was officially published. And indeed, it's subsequently been unpublished. You cannot get it on any current government websites. And as I say, I had to use the Wayback Machine to get it. They were obviously ashamed. Anyway, carrying on. It says, it remains of paramount importance that we free up hospital beds to further manage our COVID-19 response, but that now, as always, we are focused on ensuring people have access to the care that is most appropriate to their needs and well-being. Most appropriate to their needs and well-being. In other words, please continue with your policy of however you've been treating these old people. And I'm not going to say the word at this point, but I think we're all thinking euthanasia. They're euthanizing the old. Said, we know that this is also your priority, and in this in mind, we ask you to continue to do as much as you can to both sustain and learn from the progress you have made, to state the understanding that you are in regular contact with each other and our officials during this challenging period. Please continue to let them know what more we can do to provide you with support. Yours sincerely, and here we go, the letter they wanted covered. Yours sincerely, Jean Freeman, MSP, Cabinet Secretary for Health and Sport. They achieved 920 by the 8th of April. She wrote a letter congratulating them. Everybody knew what they had to do. They had to clear those beds. That, I think, is a smoking gun. And this is why they wanted this letter destroyed. And that is why I have been so very fortunate in getting possibly the only copy of this letter. Now, I'm going to zoom it out a little bit, because I said I'll show you it in full, because you don't want to doubt the veracity of it. So there it is. It comes from the Scottish Government. It's from COSLA. It's the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Sport, Gene Freeman, MSP. And I'm coming up and we will round off this video. So let me draw a summary for you. You have a nurse who proposes that a pandemic would clear all these blocked beds and would decimate old people's homes. You then have the application of a euthanizing agent put into the COVID treatment charts for end-of-life patients, and that the definition of end-of-life has been deliberately obscured and removed so that there is no firm definition. It hasn't been stated that this actually is treatment that's come from another treatment for end-of-life care for a terminal condition rather than just an infectious disease like COVID. So that gives you, as I say before, the means and the motive. And then you have the opportunity, which is where someone in the government issues a target to clear 900 beds by the end of April. And they achieve that by the 8th of April. So that's your opportunity. And to me, that presents only one conclusion. And one only has to look at the signature of that letter to draw that conclusion. Now, I'm not going to say that conclusion. I dare not say that conclusion. But I will let you, good viewer, draw your own conclusion as to what it means to have a means, a motive, and an opportunity. And I shall finish there, and I shall thank you, and I shall thank Merlin, and I will say that more is to come. I can't say when. Merlin has indicated more will come on a sort of a breadcrumb basis, drip, drip, drip. But I think this is a stunning piece of news, and I think you can see why they wanted that letter destroyed, given the context of what it actually meant and why she shouldn't perhaps have signed it herself. But I shall leave that up to Gene Freeman to explain exactly why she thought 900 beds could be cleared in a very short period of time when it had never ever happened before in the entire history of the NHS. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope that this is something that has garnered, it's a long video and I apologise for that, but it had to be long to get the information out, but I hope that this has proven worthy of a subscription so that you may know that when the next little bit drops from Merlin, you will also receive that. Thank you and goodbye.